Let's start by apologising to all the Saracens fans. I mean, fair play. That was an incredible performance in the wind and the rain, and beating Toulouse at home. That is major props for you guys, man. So, look, you ruined my prediction. I was going 5 from 5 up until that point, so fair play to Saracens. Welcome back to All Things Rugby. My name is Shanair, and I'm going to be breaking down everything that happened across this weekend's round 3 of the Investec Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. So, into round 3, and we said in our preview video, by the time we got to this weekend, it's already clear who's taking these competitions seriously, who's not sending good teams, especially to the away matches, who's focused on their domestic league form rather than this European competition. And we started off on Friday night with Gloucester fumbling the bag big time. They were leading 18-5 at one point against Edinburgh, who, you know, for their accounts, they've not been going too fantastic in the URC either. But Gloucester just can't put an 80-minute performance together at the moment. Now, they are doing the best with what they've got, and we've discussed that in our PREM review video. But when you're winning 18-5 away from home, keep playing rugby. If you try to shut up shop too early, Edinburgh just scored tries, and Edinburgh got back and ended up winning. And in the other game Friday night, Alfie Barbeary, the worst hair in rugby at the moment, keeps putting his hand up and saying, "Steve Borthwick, don't forget about me." Now, we know England have got an abundance in the back row of just so many players at the moment playing really well, let alone the Willis derby that we'll get to later on. But Alfie Barbeary was a monster both sides of the ball, getting another man of the match performance and another win for Barb. So Friday night kicked off the weekend pretty well. Now, Saturday was a right mixed bag. We're going to cover South African rugby in general later on in the week. But starting off in Pretoria, where Bristol, I said we were going to go and play an attacking style of rugby, and the Bulls have lost, I think it was 7 on the road now. Wow, oh wow. That game had zero defence completely. We had hat-tricks being scored. We had teams scoring end-to-end tries. We had over 100 points. And you're just sitting there going, I know the Springboks were going to send over their assistant coaches, but the Bulls need more than that at the moment. They just looked awful. And I said it on a video over the weekend. The likes of Pollard, de Klerk, David Krill, Willie LaRue, they're going to have to do so much now to get back into that Springbok setup after that performance, because that was just absolutely shocking. But fair play to Bristol. They went and they played their style of rugby, and it is great to watch. So if you just want some fun, grab a beer and watch the highlights of this one. The other South African side playing on Saturday in the Champions Cup was the Sharks in the Shark v Shark battle as they went over to Sale. Yeah, I just don't know. Like, they sent a rotated team, but we've seen even when they have Springboks in the side, the Durban Sharks, the Hollywood Bet Sharks just aren't performing how we know the players can individually. Now, Masuku played in at 10, and we saw how good he was a couple of years in the European Challenge Cup. But yeah, they just look so far off the pace. And it was good for Sale. Sale play a very dominant style of rugby, which, you know, it was good to see them come up against South African forwards and do that. And they played the ball wide when they needed to, and they scored some good tries. But it was more about how rubbish the Hollywood Bet Sharks have been, especially in this competition. Later on in the evening, we got probably one of the game of the rounds, and especially the one we were looking forward to in the office, Leinster versus Ronan O'Gara's La Rochelle. Now, we know about the Rog derby. We know the history in this competition with these two teams. They always end up meeting. But the first 10 minutes was the best 10 minutes of rugby I've seen Leinster do this season. Now, again, I say it every week. I'm the first to give Leinster stick. But when they play like that, they set the bar so high of what we know Leinster can play like. They were so dominant up front. Doris was banging guys for fun. Josh van der Fleer had one of the best games I've seen since pre-Lions tour. He looked absolutely fantastic. Prendergast was kicking for fun. And outside that, Rico looks like he's just slotted in like nothing. Now that, I've said this last week, that is a concern. Leinster are starting to just chip away and find better form. So, look, fair play to Leinster. They ended up winning by 1 point. But realistically, like if you look at the first 10 minutes, they were well ahead of it. And over in the Challenge Cup, the one we were all looking forward to see, the basement battle, Perpignan versus Newcastle. And the Newcastle Red Bulls are still undefeated in 2026. What is going on? It's like all of these signings are just giving them the boost they need. And to be fair to them, the rugby they're playing is getting better week on week. So look, lots of exciting things happening in Newcastle. And I know it's a Challenge Cup game against Perpignan, but they're still undefeated in this league at the moment. So good on them. That's great for the fans and it's great for rugby in the north of England. The other game that we were keeping an eye on in the office was Stade Francais versus Exeter. And I did say that I thought Exeter would rotate a lot. They're focusing on the Premiership as they're doing really well and they haven't got the biggest of squads. They did rotate. They were in this game right until the end. They lost by a couple of points, which is great for Stade Francais as well, who's, again, another team that's really up and down in that top 14. But, yeah, look, fair play to Exeter. It's a hard place to go and win. The crowd was phenomenal in this match. So, look, we've got a couple of our editors going abroad next couple of weeks to go to games in France and stuff. Keep an eye on the channel because the atmosphere at some of these games is phenomenal. But we got to Sunday. We got to Super Sunday in the Champions Cup. And I was glued to every screen going in the office. Let's start off with the mighty Harlequins, right? Now, very tongue-in-cheek comment. Please forgive me on social media, right? We played a Stormers' third team, although they had the likes of Warren Gallant and Willis playing. But my gosh, Quins were playing rugby. Like, Quins were trying to score from their own line, which was great to watch, and against a lesser opposition. They did that. That's 2 home games in Europe this year, and they put on an absolute fan fest at the Stoop. Last time against Bayern, and now against Stormers were undefeated, remember, as well. So, like, no matter what team Stormers brought over, you knew it would be good. But to do that against a team that's undefeated in this comp, undefeated in URC, and Quins haven't been going massively well. You know, like, we had that random game against Saracens that we pulled out the bag. We had the good win against Bayern. But this was phenomenal to watch. Luke Northmore, if you give that boy space, that outside arc that he runs is so good. And having someone like Alex Dombrandt back, his offload game is as good as anyone. And we said about that back rows option for England, you think the likes of him and Alfie Barbeary are just knocking on Borthwick's door. So, yeah, fair play to the mighty Quins. Great win at home. Over in France, the Red Army from Munster travelled. Now, this is probably the most controversial one of the weekend. We had one of our editors, Kaylin, over there as well, sending us videos from the game that looked incredible. Toulon got a lead, and they were so physical. Their set piece was great. Tyke Byrne got another yellow card. It's like, oh, come on, lad. Like, you're really starting to get a rep now. Not just with fans, but with refs as well. And then they managed to bring it back. Tom Farrell in midfield for Munster was so good. He got over for the score. Last minute of the game, I think it was Carl Dixon. He's given a penalty at a ruck for not moving away. And you're sitting there going, this happens maybe at every single breakdown. It is by far the biggest decision of the weekend, which is absolutely crazy. Toulon knock it over and they get the win. And it was quite funny, like Oliver after the match was like arguing with the ref. I was like, man, you're the last person that should be arguing with the ref here. But a huge win for Toulon. And Munster have 1 win from 3 in this comp. You'd expect them to kind of win next week, but also that's just not where they want to be. And then we had the revenge battle. We had Bordeaux versus Henry Pollock. And I say Henry Pollock because every time this boy got the ball, the crowd went wild booing him. And the fact that he scored twice, and the fact that he got turnovers, and the fact that he gave it the old pulse check, fair play. This guy is incredible. Look, he's just a big game player, and it was probably one of the worst Saints performances. Like, they just compounded errors, and it was like they'd give away territory, and then they'd do something bad at the set piece, or they wouldn't exit properly, and then on the return kick, Hendy would knock it on, and they look so off it this week. Now, look, we know how good Northampton have been, and we have no doubt that they'll qualify through this, and they'll get to the next round. And, you know, you wouldn't not bank on them meeting Bordeaux later on in the competition, or even in the final again. So, yeah, look, fair play to Bordeaux. They look fantastic. Jalabert is just one of the best fly halves in the world. And for the Six Nations, that is definitely going to be a conversation starter. Who do you pick? Do you pick him, or do you go with Entomac? And then the last game on Sunday, Saracens versus Toulouse. My predictions were going well. And then I very, very cocky, I'm going to say confident, but I'll call it cocky. I was like, Toulouse, 5 points, bonus point. Saracens won't get anything. Sarries pitched up like Sarries of old. And then when they got ahead, they managed to bring on the likes of Faz. And they brought on Ben Earl. And they brought on Christie. And it was soaking and it was pissing down with rain. And they were just like, we don't need the ball anymore. We've got the lead. You look and force it. And they played the perfect game plan. And as for the Willis derby, Tom Willis, not often I'll say this about anyone, made Jack Willis look average. He carried so hard. He had a good little moment when he got him in a headlock at the back of the scrum as well, which was always good to see. We put that on the channel as well. But yeah, look, Tom Willis, it looked like he had an injury at one point and he was just a monster all around the park. He got another man in the match performance as well. Like, they said it in comms, the fact that we haven't got Jack and Tom Willis playing for England is absolutely crazy. And that's another defeat for Toulouse on the road. They obviously lost to Glasgow as well in round 1. So, look, Toulouse can still qualify. It looks like they'll probably have to then get an away match, which no one wants, especially at the moment. Quins are on for a home game. I don't want them again. But Toulouse can obviously do some damage next week. They're playing Sale. Sale have qualified. Jack Willis versus one of the Currys, maybe. Don't know who's going to put out for that game. But yeah, lots of questions asked about Toulouse. And to wrap up the weekend, we had probably one of the weirdest situations. So it starts with quite a rogue situation as it is, where the Toyota Cheetahs from South Africa are in the Challenge Cup and they can't play their home games in South Africa. Now, there's always been a relationship between them and the Netherlands or Rugby Netherlands, so they can play their home games there. So we saw this last year, Cheetahs played their home games in the Netherlands. So Ulster are travelling over, and we've even hyped up the game on the channel. It's sold out, the stadium. And the day before, it's like, oh, we're going to do a weather warning check, this, that, and the other. But then it all got a little bit cagey, and we had a few friends that were at the game, and they were like, look, sounds like it might be get called off or play behind closed doors. So they moved the game behind closed doors. Apparently, it was like a local rugby club, which is like a park with no real fence and fans can see anyway. The pitch we saw on X, it just looked frozen though. Like, they obviously got the snow off, and then the game got called off. And it was like, oh, they might play the game tomorrow. They might move it somewhere else. And then late on Sunday evening, it came out and it was like, no, match is forfeited. 28-0 win to Ulster, 5-point bonus point win. I don't know. Is that what we want? Like, we are trying to grow the game. The Cheetahs are in, similar to Black Lion, like, we want these teams to have an opportunity in this competition. It's the Challenge Cup, right? Like, the bigger teams don't take it massively seriously. We've seen so many teams rotate or just not care. It's good for them to get into this competition and play. Like, the difference between that and the Rugby Europe Super Cup is so big that, you know, Black Lion won't play in the Super Cup anymore. So to then have this game called off is so damaging for the Cheetahs in this competition. And also gutting for all of the Ulster fans that went over there, having a phenomenal season and for weekend in Amsterdam. Now, I have no doubt they still had a great time in Amsterdam, I'm sure of it. But yeah, it's something that we need to look at because, again, we don't want that. In this day and age, you don't want a professional match being called off like that. So that's round 3 of the EPCR Investec Champions Cup and Challenge Cup done and dusted. We've got one more round of the pool stages, and then we're going to start going into the knockouts, which then we've got a big gap until April, until we actually have the round of 16 and the rest of it. But we've got lots to talk about on the channel. We're going to be talking about what's happening with the South African domestic teams. We're going to talk about how we would fix this EPCR competition going forward. And then we're going to start previewing everything to do with the Six Nations. And obviously, England are going to win it. So stay tuned for all of that. Make sure you like and share these videos and follow us across all of our channels. Jump over to allthingsrugby.com to check all of the highlights over the weekend. And if you haven't already, make sure you download the Rugby app as well. My name's Shanair. Thank you very much for watching All Things Rugby.